Now, I'm a little late to the party, but I was so impressed with the first season of the Prime Video series Them that I definitely wanted to give season 2, titled The Scare, a go. Now, once again, this focuses on racism and generational trauma, but does this one hit its mark? LAPD Homicide Detective Dawn Reeve is assigned to a new case, the gruesome murder of a foster home mother that has left even the most hardened detectives shaken. Navigating a tumultuous time in Los Angeles with the city on the razor's edge of chaos, Dawn is determined to stop the killer. But as she draws closer to the truth, something ominous and malevolent grips her and her family. So this is set in 1991, shortly following the Rodney King beatings. So the overall tone of LA is on edge and just stewing with unrest. Now this then sets the stage for complications and hardships LAPD Detective Reeve is going to face. She's a black female homicide detective, working with a majority of white officers, some of whom were caught on video beating the crap out of a black man, namely Rodney King. Now, the first episode, it has some similar feels of David Fincher's Seven. I mean, it's not as dark and gritty, but the ominous dread that hangs over the first crime scene that we see, it certainly is close to that serial killer masterpiece. Deborah Arendy returns for the second season, but now she's playing Detective Reeve. In the first season, she portrayed Lucky Emery, the mother and wife who moved with her family into this white suburb and then discovered the hidden horrors her neighbors possessed within their mindsets. Now, Arendy is wonderful in this role as Reeve. She balances out the character's toughness and resolve with vulnerability and some softness, which is typically reserved for her teenage son. There are so many uncomfortable sequences that are shown throughout the series that highlight the rampant, brazen, even open racism that many of the white police officers hold. And many times during the show, I was not only fearful for Reeve, but I wanted multiple bigots to meet a very violent end. And while that didn't happen as I'd like, the anxiety and tension that the show creates from these interactions, it was highly effective in creating a visceral response while also keeping me glued to the story. Now, Jeremy Bobb, who's played a couple of less than desirable characters before, he portrays Reeves' partner. And right from the start, we can see how much of a bad guy he is. Every time he was on screen, he just set my teeth on edge. I was impressed with his performance, but I abhorred the character. And while we get some good performances from people like Pam Grier, Joshua J. Williams, and Carlito Olivero, Luke James is the massive standout. He plays this character named Edmund Gaines, and his emotional delivery is both terrifying and captivating. He's an aspiring actor, and throughout the series we watch how he struggles to find the right voice for his auditions. One or two of his attempts, they just create laughs because of how wrong he is for the part, and he's attempting to gain a role that is completely foreign to him. And his audition, it shows that. James, though, captures the passion, frustration, and then eerie focus that makes his character riveting to watch. And there's a moment where he tries on a character for somebody. Now, we as the audience, we instantly know that this is not a good idea. But his naivete or simpleness, it just doesn't allow him to think in terms of how his actions might appear to somebody else. He innocently believes his mind. And this, it is a setup for a masterfully disquieting sequence. The mystery that propels the story is intriguing, and because the murders are not only baffling and unimaginable, it's one more element the story employs to craft an interwoven narrative that's just layered with complexities. We have the serial killer that's tormenting the cities, the riots and protests over the racially motivated brutality against King, the abject racism of a large group of LAPD officers and detectives, and then the family struggles that are brewing in Detective Reeves' life. Then there's also the mental anguish Edmund Gaines is undergoing. All of these mix together and intersect in small and large ways to keep us guessing at some points and then horrified at others. Now, I love how immersive the visuals and the effects become. Many times throughout the show, we see visual stylings that just help to illustrate a character's mindset. So if they're feeling intense stress or anxiety, the imagery, it becomes blurred all around the edges with only that center being somewhat in focus. And then there are pulsing effects. So when it's combined, it looks like somebody's having a panic attack and their vision is becoming distorted and narrowed, which is then exacerbated by the pulsing that's behind their eyes, and it makes the whole world just jump about. It's an effective way to convey emotions, and because it's not overused, it doesn't lose its punch. And some nasty scenes are augmented and they're amplified thanks to just some gnarly sound effects. And we're shown some imagery, but most of the time we only hear what's going on. Since though we have a mental blueprint of what the aftermath is most likely going to be, we don't need to see the horrific actions taking place to see them within our mind. I think that can sometimes just be worse. There are also visions that characters have, and these can be the stuff of nightmares thanks to the unhinged looks showcased in the visions. There's a menace and depravity we see, and because the looks are also accompanied by utter detachment from any sort of empathy or compassion, they become frightening on just a whole new level. Now, a couple of the minor storylines, they felt unnecessary for the story as a whole. Reeve has a relationship with someone, and while it can help to show other sides of her personality, the interactions, they don't progress the story in meaningful ways. We're shown nuances of her character at other times throughout the show, so the sequences with her lover, they just become filler. There's also a sequence involving Edmund that works to inform his mental state, but this also came on sort of out of the blue, and then was never revisited. Events are hinted at during a conversation Edmund has with somebody, but it was hard to determine if the thing really occurred or if it were just unfounded fears that were based in bigotry. There's also an element to the storyline that might be pointing to white savior mentality, but I think for the commentary to be more effective, it probably should have been less vague. Speaking of vague, I never know. Everything I just said, that was completely that way. I don't want to give anything away, but this whole sequence that I'm talking about occurs when Edmund attends a party at an affluent home. So now you have some context there for when you watch. Now, something I really appreciate about the series is that while it works as an anthology, telling two different but similar stories in different time periods, there's still a connection that ties the seasons together, creating a continuity of emotions and messaging that results in a tremendous horror story. So overall, Them, the Scare, once again effectively uses racism and bigotry as the backdrop to craft a suspenseful and unsettling horror story. The theme of generational trauma is executed well, using layered character elements along with visceral and disturbing imagery to produce a pointed social commentary that unfortunately is still more than relevant today. Deborah Ayorinde shines in the lead role as a strong and intelligent protagonist, facing off against threats at every angle. Luke James is also spectacular, effectively meshing simpleness with ferocity to deliver an indelible character you can't take your eyes off. Not every story beat is necessary or effective, but as a whole, the series delivers chills, excitement, and righteous anger so that the pros far outweigh the cons. Also, if you want to hear a spoiler discussion on this series, my friend Ruben from the Ruby Tuesday Night, we are going to have one up on our Patreon very soon. That link is in the description, so you can check out those opportunities if you want to. There is sex, some nudity, a lot of profanity, and then a bunch of vicious violence. I give Them, the Scare, 4.5 out of 5 couches. So have you seen this season? Was it even on your radar? I don't think Prime did a good job of marketing this, but I would love to know what you thought of this series if you've seen it. Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.